Wendy Rodrigue here. I am visiting with you from New Orleans, Louisiana, specifically Spanish Plaza, because I wanted to share with you a memory, which I'll get to in a minute. This week is the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, and I've had a lot of things on my mind, as probably many of you have, and I wanted to share several of them. First of all, when I look back on that time, and why don't we take a walk together so I'll share this with you, because we're right here on the Mississippi River. Important. When I look back on that time, one of the big things that stands out in my mind is George, my husband. We were in Houston, Texas. Not evacuated. Evacuation is different than vacation, than work, than anything else. Evacuation, you take all your most important belongings, the things that are irreplaceable. Your photo albums, your priceless treasures that were gifts from grandmas long gone, your pets. And we were in Houston not to evacuate, but for an exhibition. George had an exhibition there, and our whole staff was with us, pretty much. And here came the storm. We had intended to be gone a few days, so we had a friend watching, not our cats, but my mama's cats. My mama had died a few months before, and we had our cats. So a friend was going by to feed those cats. And then this storm hit. And we watched on television the horrific thing that we all watched or lived in too many cases. And as we watched this, it was interesting because George and I, of course, talked about it. We had discussions. I mean, we were married. And one of the biggest things that stands out in my mind is that not once did George talk about concern for our house. We never had that conversation, like what's going on with our house. It was just so shocking to see what was going on with our city and our people. And so, honestly, we just assumed our house had flooded. Or at least, I should say, I assumed our house had flooded. And I just assumed that George assumed the same thing, because we never had the discussion. Honestly, y'all, we didn't care. We just didn't care, because it was so much bigger than us. And so, we worried about the cats. We did worry about that. And a friend in New Orleans had a company that came in, had hired a company that came in to take care of some critical issues at their home. And it was a very delicate thing because nobody was even allowed into the city, and through all kinds of circumstances, they were able to make this happen. And they asked us if there was anything that they could help us with, and George and I said, yes, the cats, because we were worried about them. Now, because of course, the man who had been taking care of them, he had to evacuate. His home was flooded. And they had been there at this point for a couple weeks. No food, nothing. We were worried about them. So these people went in and were able to retrieve the cats. And when they brought them to us in Lafayette, which is where we were staying at the time, since we couldn't get back into the city, we didn't ask about our house. George asked about one thing only, and it surprised even me. He said, the oak tree, is it still standing? So we had this big oak tree in our courtyard. It was the reason we bought the house. It was a Rodrigue oak, like from his paintings, right? And that's what he asked about. All the stuff to ask about. He asked about that tree. And you know what those guys said? They said, and they were so nice, and if you're listening, thank you so much. You know who you are. They were so nice, and they said, as a matter of fact, it's still standing, but it's split. And it's fallen both ways. And they said that the courtyard was so displaced around the tree that they couldn't even get close to it. In some parts, because of the roots of the tree, right? Because the tree had swayed. It was massive, massive oak. The tree had swayed so much that it had kicked up areas of the courtyard, in some places as high as a man. So they couldn't get close to it. But why had they noticed? They noticed because up high in the branches of the tree was a cow. Literally, this giant, life-size fiberglass cow, hand-painted by George, painted blue and yellow. It had yellow eyes. It was all painted, and it had been on display in our courtyard when we left for Houston. And the storm, sort of like the Wizard of Oz, or maybe the Whomping Willow, right, had like taken that cow and swirled it all the way up into the tree, and there it was, upside down. So they noticed the tree. That was all George asked about, the tree. So, fast forward. Oh, I forgot about this too. This was important. They did mention that our house was unlocked when they got there. The front door was unlocked, and the back door, the one going to the courtyard, was not only unlocked, but it was wide open. So we just assumed that our house had been looted, just like we had assumed it had flooded, but we never talked about it. Or rather, I assumed, so I just assumed George assumed too. And again, we never even talked about it. We never even had the conversation. So fast forward, and George and I eventually are able to get back into the city. We get back to our house, but we're not able to stay there because, no, it turns out we did not flood. And no, it turns out we were not looted. But we did lose a large portion of our roof, and it rained in, specifically when Hurricane Rita came, which a lot of people never talk about because Katrina was so huge. But you know what? Rita was huge too. And a lot of people suffered greatly, particularly in the western parts of Louisiana and on into Texas with Rita. And in this case, it just poured down rain into our house because we had lost that roof. No big deal. Just no big deal. Again, we didn't care. We didn't care because the suffering was so massive all around us that that's all we cared about. That's certainly all I saw George care about, and that's where his relief efforts came from. So, here comes Mardi Gras, about 6 months after the storm. And the city of New Orleans is still going to have Mardi Gras. And they being the national press, basically vilified us because we were going to have Mardi Gras. I mean, vilified us because we're going to have Mardi Gras. How can you do that? How can you do that when so many people are suffering? Well, you can do that because you need it. Because if you lose your soul too, because if you lose your culture, if you lose your spirit completely, a broken spirit is a fragile thing. And if you lose it completely, you don't have anything to fight for, to come back. Clancy Dubose, very good friend of mine and George's, and also really wonderful journalist from here in New Orleans, is in the new documentary out on George, Blue, the Life and Art of Wendy Rodrigue. And he talks very poignantly, movingly about his recollections of Hurricane Katrina. You know, more than 1,800 people lost their lives across Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Millions of people lost their homes. 80% of the city was flooded. 80% of this city was underwater. And one of the things he says was that there was a widespread feeling of hopelessness. We needed Mardi Gras. We needed a bit of hope because the hopelessness was palpable. It was like this heavy, heavy weight on all of us. So despite all the criticisms, here came Mardi Gras and we wanted it. And so I don't remember, I can honestly tell you, in the Mardi Gras of 2006, I don't remember going to a single parade. I don't remember going to a single party, but I remember this, and it happened right here where we're standing. It was on Lundi Gras, which, for those of you who don't know, is the day before Mardi Gras Day, the day before Fat Tuesday. It's the Monday. And George and I remember walked from way down there, the bend in the river. We walked from our house in the Maroney all the way through the quarter, early on Lundi Gras, to right here, where I'm standing. To right here. There were thousands of people here, Spanish Plaza. Thousands of people. And we met hundreds of people that day. Many of them from Mississippi. I can tell you right now, George and I marveled at it for the rest of his life. We didn't meet a single person who had not lost their home. They were all living in FEMA trailers. Every person we met, we were the only people who still had our house. I mean, how that happened, I don't know. But the Chiwis were playing. And maybe some of you know them. If you don't, you should look them up. Really fantastic New Orleans band, Chiwis. And they were on a stage set up like right here. I mean, right here where I'm standing. And thousands of people all around this whole plaza. We're right behind the aquarium. And they're playing music. Everybody's visiting and talking. And at one point, they start playing Joy to the World. And everybody stops talking. And they're watching the Chiwis. And then we start singing Joy to the World. All the boys and girls now. Joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea. Joy to you and me. They stopped with their instruments, the Chiwis. They stopped playing and they just sang with the crowd. And we were singing louder and louder. And then all of a sudden, these helicopters with the National Guard came down right here, swooped down over the Mississippi River and came right over this plaza, down low, and the soldiers were hanging out of the sides of the helicopters, strapped on and waving to the crowds, and we sang louder. We sang louder. We had our hope. We needed it. And that tree I told you about behind our house, well, we saved it. Oh, the tree doctor saved it, not us. And this happened 2 times a year, every year, for at least 5 years, maybe a few more. A whole flock of birds, freed birds, domestic birds, came to that tree. At the top of the tree would be the macaws, and at the bottom were the parakeets and the finches, and everything in between from lovebirds to cockatiels. And they would stay a couple days, once in the fall and once in the spring. Freed birds from a city of people who owned birds, and the birds lost their homes too, right? When the houses were destroyed, and they escaped, and they were free now, and they traveled together. It was magic. It's all about magic, isn't it? Who wants realism? Said Tennessee Williams, right? It's all about the magic. And George and I loved greeting those birds twice a year. We all want freedom. We all want beauty. We all want an easy road. Life's not easy. May we, people of New Orleans, and all who have suffered with such things, may we use these circumstances to strengthen our compassion and our caring for others. Many who are suffering around the world today, may we remember that the story we hear is not the whole story. It may be the truth, it may not, but whatever it is not the whole truth. And that is my wish. On this 20th anniversary of Katrina, I'm here not to celebrate. I'm here because I love this city. I love these people. and I'm glad to be here. Thank you for listening. Enjoy. Bye.